Masculinity is one of the hottest debates in our culture right now. Boys are growing up in a world that never switches off, where social media, peer pressure, and online figures shape how they see themselves and each other. Daniel is right in the thick of it. He spends his days in schools across Australia speaking to tens of thousands of young men about identity, relationships, and mental health. His work's about giving boys the space to be honest and the encouragement to be themselves instead of hiding behind the masks they feel pressured to wear. This conversation isn't just about teenagers. Similar struggles with pressure, insecurity, and false ideas of masculinity follow men well into adulthood. Daniel is challenging a generation to redefine what it means for a man to be tough and strong in our modern world. This is Daniel Principe.
Welcome to Youngblood, the volunteer video podcast dedicated to young men's mental health. I'm your host, Cal McPherson, and this is a platform for young men and their loved ones to share lived experience stories and show that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Suicide is the number one killer of young people, and changing that starts with speaking up. So let's do it. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself.
Daniel, what inspired you to want to educate young men in the way that you do?
I think for me, like many, it's birthed out of our own pains and disappointments, the things that we wish we could have personally shown up better in life for. We wish we had other people show up for us, guide us. I certainly don't do this work, as I said to the lads this morning and every day, because I think I've got all the answers, or I've worked it all out, or I've managed to walk this journey and do it well. I have struggled with my own mental health, struggled with my own relationships, my own relationship to myself, and not showing up in ways that I think I would have liked to. And I felt the impact of that on me personally and on others across my journey. And so I want to create conversations and spaces and subcultures where boys can be really for themselves, for one another, wanting good for themselves, wanting good for each other. And so I feel like I owe that to them. I don't owe them all the answers, because I certainly don't have them, but I feel like I owe them what I wish I had, which was just like a safer space to be able to process what was going on in my head and heart, and how to do that well.
What were some of the things that you struggled with, particularly as a middle school age, high school age boy?
Crushing of insecurity and not fitting in. And because I was a softer, more sensitive boy, and I think most men actually are, to be honest. I think some are just way better at wearing masks than others and kind of putting on this fake tough guy persona. But I think for me, I couldn't. And as a result, you just become an easy target. And yeah, I'm not a special little unicorn, because I was bullied and harassed, but I did cop it a lot. Had people threatening to bash me after school from time to time. Thankfully, that never escalated, but that was definitely something that I was navigating throughout my adolescence, and wondering my place in it all, and feeling conflicted between what I felt was a better path for me in terms of how I showed up for others, but then feeling drawn to do things to fit in and to have that sense of belonging. And so I felt conflicted with that at many times. And I think you lose a sense of integrity and a sense of buoyancy when you feel like you're out of sync with, I guess, being authentic, living your values. So that was massive for me. And I think I've just seen people hurt themselves and hurt others, and I'm one of them, when we haven't been healthy, when we've been so reactive. And I can only speak for myself, like when you feel so, the insecurity and the chatter in your brain is so loud that it just dominates, and you're not able to show up well, because you're just so wanting to protect this like ego version of yourself, this kind of illusion you have of yourself. And so I think for me, being led by that for too long into my life, into my 20s, I think was a real hindrance and harm, and something that I look back on now, and I remember just how loud that voice would always be, where I was always trying to I guess, put up a front, put up a mask, try to never be found out, I guess. And so, yeah, I remember that. I then became really dissatisfied with that, because I think I felt this tension between like, I just am not living out my values and principles. But I was an awful human. Again, I'll let others make those judgments and those observations. But I think just feeling that sense of powerlessness, that disempowerment, that sense of like, I know that I want to show up taking more responsibility of my life. I want to actually live the things that I say that I care about, that are meaningful to me, whether that's friendships, whether that's family, whether that's in romance, whether that's in my own well-being and health. Like, I want to try new things. And I just didn't. I was so stunted by fear of failure, by anxieties. And I think I just hit a tipping point where like the pain of staying where I was and feeling the costs of that just outweighed everything. And I was like, I need to do something different. And that's why I'm just so grateful to have had men and women, people who have just been great friends, mentors, just people who have provoked an appetite for more around me. And I'm forever indebted to those folks.
What you've articulated there is how a lot of men and human beings feel, where we're not aligned with our values. We find ourselves living a life that isn't the life we planned. Or perhaps we get up and go to work every day doing something that we wish we weren't doing. We wish we were somewhere else. This wasn't the life that we were supposed to live. And so not a unique point that you hit, I think lots of people will be able to relate to. If you had to drill down to a couple of salient things, how have you been able to change course and now live a different kind of life where you don't feel that way anymore?
You just get tired of your own crap. Yeah, you do. And sometimes you have to kind of feel the grit of that, the loss of that, the angst of that, and go, hang on a second here. Like, yes, there are factors outside of my control. Like, yes, I never saw a healthy relationship modeled in my home personal life. Like, yes, like I didn't know what healthy friendships look like. Yes, I was bullied. Yes, that like you can say all this, but then eventually it was like, yeah, you have to look in the mirror and it's like, yeah, who's the person letting you down most? And it's like, it's quite often ourselves, like that is a hard thing to wrestle with. Is yes, there's always unfortunate external factors. And of course, we never know what other people's stories are. And some people have really colorful stories, and I think we have to show people kindness and empathy with that. But yeah, I think for me, it was just like, yeah, I just got to the point where I was sick of it. And I realized just how much it was robbing me. Like just having this guy chattering away in my head, always doubting myself, feeling insecure, never taking like the most insignificant risk in my career or my life, just getting out of my comfort zone. And then unsurprisingly, like I was, in my 20s, just feeling like I was living this half life, like I wasn't fully alive. Like I went to work, went to the gym, hung out with people, but I felt so like, yeah, I was just like, I can't explain, like living this half life. Like I wasn't fully animated and fully present and in what I was doing. Not that every moment should be euphoric and liminal, but I wasn't alive to it all. I wasn't fully me. And I think that was a huge shift. And I was someone who then just started like, the comfort and ease for me is like, I'm a bit of a nerd. I like reading. I like reflecting. And so like, I had to do that. But then I realized I actually got to do stuff. I can't just sit on my couch like every New Year's thinking about my values and writing about my values and asking questions about my values and my goals, my plans. I think that's really important. And I commend it for everybody to take stock from time to time about who they are, who they're becoming. But I realized, hang on a minute, I'm just like sitting here reflecting and there's not a lot of skin in the game sitting on your couch, right? And that's not to diss that, but I realized that was a kind of nice cover story I was running. Because again, I was still playing it safe, sitting on my couch, thinking about the things that I'd like to do, which is important. I think we should think well. I think we should take times for reflection. But that, to be honest, was all I was doing. I wasn't really taking new risks. And eventually I was like, I just got to say yes to more things and be okay with failing at them. And unsurprisingly, that sucks to begin with because you pick up something like acting and you're not good at it, or you start boxing, which I did. And that's now like something that I love and you suck at it to begin with. I then picked up pottery and I was like, I'm not good at this. And like, you just try new things. And as a recovering like people pleasing perfectionist, it's like you hate not being good at something or being exposed or not meeting other people's expectations. But I definitely had to do just little things to get out of my comfort zone, because there's no way I could be doing what I did today if I didn't find little things to not be good at, get the feedback on and improve. Because I love that we haven't talked about my work, but in my work, I naturally speak in front of lots of people who are judging you, assessing you. Are you smart enough, interesting enough? Are you credible enough? And like you have to deal with the fact that people will give you feedback whether you want it or not. And you can't crumble every time you hear that, And so I had to kind of train in those little things. And I would say the biggest gift I've had is, and the biggest shift was like, I was at least hungry enough. I had a desire that I was like, I need to get some good humans and some good mentors in my life. And I sent emails, I made phone calls, I knocked on doors. Most don't open, but some do. And hey, you don't need 100 mentors. Like, you don't need 100 best friends. You just need a couple of great humans who are on your side, in your court, wanting good for you, who are holding you to the highest standards of yourself. And I think of those men and women and how grateful I am for them. And once you find your tribe and the people that are there for you, like I would just say I'm just utterly indebted to them. They both call out the gold in us. They, see your potential, which is what a good friend or mentor does, but they also don't let you kind of play it safe, coddle, compromise your values. Like they call you higher. So I think what I brought to the table was a lot of insecurity, fear, but I at least had this appetite of I wanted more. I wasn't apathetic. So that's what I'll give myself a tiny bit of credit for, is I wasn't apathetic, but I lacked in so many departments. I knew I wanted more for myself, and I still do, and I'm still learning and growing. I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what it looked like. And I think, I don't know if you think this, Cal, but like, I think so much is like caught rather than taught. Like, you see it in somebody else, you see traits or a way that they show up in life or for their partner or for their kids, and you admire that. And you're like, gosh, I didn't know that that was such a good thing, or I didn't know that that good thing existed, or that's what it actually looked like to be a good friend, to be a good husband, to be a good father. But like, I've just caught a glimpse of it, and now I really want that. And that just provoked an appetite in me. And so, yeah, I would say those three things have been a real catalyst.
I think that's helpful, because two of the things that I picked out of that is getting comfortable with rejection and being okay sucking at stuff. And when you suck at it initially, no shit, you suck at it. It's hard. That's why you admire people who can do it well. And also
Yes.
understanding that there aren't other people going, oh my God, that's so sad. Look how much that person sucks at that thing that they've never done before. That's all in your head. And if you can get over that and then be able to progress, that's going to build self-esteem and confidence. And slowly over time, you don't suck as much as you did before, or you find something else that you like more and you're better at that. And all the while realizing that no one else cared except you. And then over quite a lot
Absolutely.
of time and a lot of effort, you end up being someone new entirely. And I think that that's quite helpful to hear, because guessing you, Daniel, in your early 20s, if they said you're going to be this guy who speaks on stage in front of thousands of people and travels around the country doing that and going on TV, you would have said, there's no way in hell that that's going to happen. Like,
No chance. No
because
chance.
that's way too big of a jump. But I think the way you've described that, that's really useful, because you've said, well, if you can go out there and get rejected and suck at stuff, you can build into being the kind of person that you deep down think you want to be. And I think someone listening to this who's like, I'm there and I feel that way, they think I can go and get rejected and suck at stuff.
Yeah, like every couple of years, every 2-3 years, like pick up a new hobby that you suck at. It doesn't have to be your thing, but it's like so teachable, like to learn something new. But then even like for me, like learning a little bit of martial arts and picking up boxing and like going and doing that for a little bit of time and realizing that the guys who'd won world championship belts at the gym were still teachable, learning, always improving. And I think that's what happens is you realize that the people who actually are committed to personal growth, relational growth, like like whatever, like in their profession or in their life or in their like practice, like they are teachable and they want to help others. And I've noticed that a lot around healthy people. Like healthy people, they want good for others. They're not spending much of their life talking trash or judging other people. They're actually helping them. And that's what I found, like the more that, I've tried to get out of my comfort zone is like good humans aren't sitting here talking trash, gossiping about others. That's just the furthest from like their values, their endeavors, where they want to spend their time and energy. And so, yeah, as you said, like when you rock up and suck at something you've never done before, like shock horror, you've never done it before. And everyone else is like, yeah, I've been there too, like I've been there too. It's like I say this all the time when someone doesn't know how to pronounce a word properly, right? I haven't. I've mispronounced words. Like, why judge someone and make them feel bad about that? They've tried their best. They've clearly like read a word and never heard somebody use it or say it correctly. Like, we don't know what we don't know. I don't know why people would shame someone in that moment, because we all didn't know things until we knew them. And so, yeah, I think the biggest thing is like probably thinking about the communities, the friendships, the networks that we want to be a part of, who have a really positive, healthy growth mindset, a healthy understanding of failure versus bad character. Being judged for bad character is very different from this was your first crack at public speaking and you've got things to learn. Like, bad character is like, I was rude to people. I was obnoxious. I didn't take advice. Like, like that's something different to like, I had a go and I wasn't as good. And I feel like as a society, we kind of punish failure more than we do like poor character, which I think is something that we should challenge more readily than someone having a go and trying to improve their place in life. Now, no disrespect to any true Aussie patriots listening. It's one of the many things I don't like about Australian culture, of course, is our tall poppy syndrome, our, bucket of crabs, and trying to tear down people who are trying to improve themselves and their lot in life. And every day from boys, the main thing that's holding them back from improving their well-being, their relationship to self, to their mates, to a future partner or current partner, is peer pressure. They tell me this 100%. They, for the most part, know what is good, what is right, what is healthy. Let's be honest, we don't lack the information right now in 2025. I mean, maybe you haven't had someone show you where to find it and what a good, healthy life and relationships look like, but we're kind of overdosed on good information. What stops boys, and what they tell me, and I relate to it, is the peer pressure. Is being shamed for the very things that they know are good for them, good for their lives, good for their relationships.
Peer pressure is synonymous with the teenage boy, those old ads and sexual health videos and don't do drugs kids videos from the 80s, where there's like the typical peer pressure scene. That's sort of what I think of when I think of peer pressure. And you absolutely, as you just said, that it's rampant and at that age as we're still developing. What do you think about peer pressure for men in their 20s, in their 30s? How present do you think peer pressure continues to be in our lives after school?
You could even flip it, and I really like this lens as well, which is that it's not so much that peer pressure is bad as it's the type of peer pressure, right? Because like, if you've got a group of mates who you've committed to maybe, doing a particular discipline for like 60 days, and you're holding each other to that in a group chat, and whatever that is, whatever those soft skills or physical skills or tasks or disciplines are, but you're like clearly like you're checking in every day, there's a peer pressure around that. Like when people take themselves to 12-step programs, right? There's actually a healthy kind of peer pressure with that, because you have people who check in with you, who help you along your journey. So in a sense, I probably should have clarified, unhealthy peer pressure versus a positive sense of like, yeah, that's buffeting us along. And so I think it still exists. It's just, what kind of pressures are you facing? Are you having pressures from your peers to act out in destructive ways, to compromise your personal integrity? Or is your pressure like to buffet you along in a positive direction? I've never shared this on a podcast, so I may as well share it today. Is like, I have a mentor, right? And he's just great. He's like one of the most straight shooting guys who grew up in the rough part of town. And I just love him, and I need someone with his grit and his kind of robustness, because he's still so caring. But whenever I've got like a big life decision, or I'm wrestling with, an ethical, moral dilemma in my life and what to do or how to handle a difficult situation or scenario, as I'm talking to him, he'll playfully say, "Oh, I'm on this bloke's website. You should check it out. I reckon you'd really, really resonate with it. I'd love to read you some of it." And he starts reading it. And what he's doing is he's reading from my own website and reading my own, vision, values, mission to me. And he's just playfully taunting me to say like, well, this all sounds great. So he pretty much then asked me like, are you a man of your word or not? Like, are you going to live the thing that you say you're about or not? And I love that he does that. And I call him knowing in different playful ways he's going to do that. He's going to put a healthy kind of pressure on me to say, step up, do what's right. You already know it in your heart. That's why you're calling me on the phone, because you actually want to do the right thing. And you might just need that, whether you want to call it peer pressure or moral support or accountability, like pick your poison. But that's what we're all looking for. And so I think that remains throughout life. I think perhaps depending on how insecure we are, like we may be more swayed, and we might be more swayed usually to people that aren't healthy. But yeah, it exists. I think it can just be such a force for good. And that's why I actually say to the lads most days, like, I feel like I'm so fortunate to do life on easy mode, because I don't know about you, Cal, but like my family, my friends, my mentors, like they want me to be well. They want me to do well. They want me to be a good human who lives my values. Like they're not putting pressure on me to not be those things. They're like, yeah, we're about this. Whereas that's not everybody's experience. And that's why I always say to every person, but especially young men, like choose your friends wisely. And you know, that kind of saying that it's like, oh, we become like the 5 people we hang out with most. It's kind of like half true, because we can knock around with people at work or in school a lot who may or may not rub off on us heaps. But what I think is more true is we'll become like the 5 people or the people whose validation matters most to us. So like whoever we're trying to impress, to make laugh, to get a pat on the back from, to get some, praise or affirmation from. I always say to the young lads, like, I hope they're good humans with good values who give a rip about you. Because if you're going to spend your life trying to impress these people, I hope that's a worthwhile endeavor and use of your time, energy, resources.
Yeah, we want people in our lives who are like an extrapolation of the better part of our consciousness, who, as much as they can, they're that angel on your shoulder, or they're saying what you know in your heart you should do. But often we don't listen to the better part of our own nature. We feed the wrong wolf, and you want people around you who are like, no, mate, how about you do that thing that you know you should do? And you're like, all right, thanks. Because, if you weren't here, maybe I would have done exactly the opposite of that today. And the more we can surround ourselves with those people and be those people for others, then certainly the better. Do you think peer pressure is any different now because the world's changed so much in schools and for adolescent boys in particular? Or are we talking about the same sort of pressure that there's always been?
I don't know about you, Cal, but like my first phone was a Nokia 3310. So when I was getting bullied and picked on, like, once I got on my final school bus home, no one could contact me. I pretty much had respite, went home, went to footy or cricket training, and ate lots of Italian food. And that was my life. And you had some respite from 4 o'clock till 8 o'clock the next morning. Maybe you'd obviously go to footy training and there'd be pressures or pack mentality around that. But, like it relented. Whereas, of course, now it doesn't stop. There's multiple group chats, there's gaming chats, there's ideas coming at us that also push peer pressure on social media around how you should physically look, around physiques, around financial success, around, how to act as a man towards other men, how to act as a man towards other women. Like all of this is actually subtle forms of pressures. I mean, we can call it pressures, we can call it social norms, we can call it stereotypes, but in essence, they're putting ideas, suggestions, low-level pressures around how we ought to act. And that's the part that I think doesn't relent as much. And I hear it from young lads who feel like they can't escape it, that the banter just doesn't stop, because of course you can just keep going in a group chat that once, I was home, like there was other things to get on with. There wasn't this constant need to be engaged and talking and responding to people. So yeah, it's always existed. And when I say this isn't because like young people are bad or wrong. Like they didn't create this. They aren't pulling the strings of Silicon Valley profiting from this. They're just trying to like keep up, make sense with, or digital world that they're navigating. And they themselves say like it can be all consuming. And we see that in a lot of the data. And I think that's what makes it hard. And that's where I think adults should have more empathy for young people. Empathy doesn't mean, do whatever the heck you want and there's no accountability or responsibility, but it certainly starts us by going, hey, I don't know what it's like to be in your shoes. I don't know what it's like to navigate puberty and adolescence with a smartphone in my pocket and all the, benefits that can come with that. But definitely all the challenges that come with it as well. So I think that's what has shifted. I think as a society, we're starting to reckon with that, albeit way, way, way too late. But I think we're starting to recognize, oh, hang on a minute here. This has actually created a pretty hostile and challenging environment for young people. Manifests differently for boys and girls. It's not a competition. There's challenges they both face, challenges that they uniquely face, but we probably need to think about that. And are we making it easier for them to have a healthy relationship to self and others? That's what I want to talk about, you know? Tech's not going away, AI's not going away, but are we doing all that we can to set them up to thrive in a hyper tech based world? And right now, I'm not convinced we can say yes to that.
Especially when there's a whole lot more tech with a whole lot more problems attached coming down the pipe that we're unprepared for too. So you're in an interesting line of work.
Absolutely.
In that line of work, I mean, you have spoken to tens of thousands of young people in recent years. So I think you're uniquely positioned to answer this. How do you feel like the reality compares to the moral panic around adolescent boys?
They're not homogenous. You know, who is the average 14, 15-year-old lad? Is he a nerd? Is he a jock? Is he kind? Is he courageous? Is he anxious? Is he single? Is he dating? What's home like? Is it safe? Is it volatile? So, you know, that's just teenage boys. So yeah, I understand the concern, but naturally, of course, only the worst stories make the media and do the rounds. We don't hear about the fact that there is a significant number of young men who are just decent, kind humans, just trying to do their best to survive and get through school. I'm not saying boys are cherubs. I'm definitely alarmed by the behavior of some boys. Some of boys, it is horrifying. I don't want to sugarcoat that. The things that I've seen, the things that I've heard, horrific. But what's challenging, right, is that isn't representative of the majority. But then what do we do about it? Because the challenge for all of us is we help shape the culture that allows people to act like that and hurt others, you know, other guys, girls, whoever. And what do we do as the guys who are like, well, I don't agree with that intellectually, but don't do anything like in reality to make it less of a harmful reality for others? What do I mean by that? Like, guys know that there's some guys out there that are giving them a hard time, that are giving girls a hard time. And do they have the confidence, the courage to like disrupt that before it escalates into something ugly at an event or a party, right? And that's where we need more grounded, confident, courageous young men who are decent, who can actually de-escalate some of the stuff that maybe they sit there going, yeah, I'm not about this, I don't like this, but they're not actually doing anything to kind of disrupt that kind of behavior or those attitudes. And so I think that's where we then say, oh, well, it's, you know, there's this huge crisis, and there is a crisis in some regard, but I don't think it's exactly what the media is saying. I'm worried about the passivity, the apathy of boys, which means that they don't care about themselves. And I'm sure you know, Cal, when you don't give a rip even about yourself, you certainly don't care about others. You don't care about the well-being of your mates, of women and girls, of strangers on the street. So I think that's a big change that we have to see is like, how do we actually engage boys in a way that says like, you have so much to give, that you at your best is a wonderful prospect for you, for your mates, for the world around you. What are your talents? If you don't know, can we help you find out? What do you care about? Because of course we now live in this nonchalant culture. The memes run its course. And as I say to the boys, I don't know if Aussie men need to be any more nonchalant. I actually want you guys to care. I don't want you to be any more passive. I want you to take responsibility and to show up well for yourselves. And I think, yeah, we have to model that for them, you know, and that's where I think like we have to ask ourselves as a society, have we done enough to raise boys when we're competing against billion and trillion dollar industries that don't have their best interests at heart? Now, that's not our fault. It's like nobody knew, hang on a minute here, when we were like raising, you know, when we gave birth to 16-year-old boys 16 years ago, nobody knew that we'd be competing against like huge global industries that are hijacking their limbic systems, their pleasure systems, from pornography to gambling to gaming, that I think is robbing so much of their time, their energy, their attention, their ambition, their decency. Who could have imagined or predicted we'd be where we are? So it's nobody's fault. But then the question is, well, what do we do about this? Because I see so much untapped potential talent for young boys that's not being harnessed. And then I think if we don't harness it for good, it's that classic thing. And then it just spills out in reckless ways. I don't know if you've looked into or had other guests talking about rites of initiation, like, or rites of passage on your podcast, Cal, before. But, you know, it's this classic thing of like, if we don't initiate boys into healthy manhood, then they're just going to look to other uninitiated boys to take their cues through doing destructive, fake tough guy things, rather than actually building towards something that's good for them, taking responsibility for things that are good. And so I don't just see it as like, oh, some boys are doing bad, so there's a long way to get to my point. I see it as like, have we done enough to launch boys into the good of who they are, their place in the world, their capacity to use their strengths, their talents for good? So that's actually what I see as the issue. It just manifests naturally in some of them acting in destructive ways to self and others, because I don't think we've built these structures, the pathway, the journey for them as well as we should have, could have, as well as perhaps we've done in previous generations. Not saying let's go back to the pre-industrial revolution, but we did think about these things once upon a time, or we did have these things in place.
Those rites of passage are missing and have been missing for a very long time. And if we look at cultures around the world that do that much better, they fare much better in that respect. And I think part of the benefit of rites of passage is, one, they inherently bestow value on young men and say,
Yes.
you're valuable. And then they also bestow responsibility. And they say, actually, you're a man now. You're becoming a man. You're not a boy. So you can't act like a boy. You have some responsibility. And that responsibility means serving your community, serving the group, serving your fellow man. And then we find purpose within that. And then that itself is a guiding light. And if that's missing, and we, especially when we're that young, we don't know what's missing, and we can't rationalize it or articulate it, but we just know we feel like no one cares about me, or I don't have a path to follow. So then we're very susceptible to whatever bullshit is floating around the zeitgeist that feels good, that feels like it speaks to me, because it's filling this void of, I don't feel like anyone's really speaking to me. And I'm desperate for some guidance, some direction, some way to live my life, to something to anchor myself to. And if we're not very obviously going out and giving that to young men in particular, and in a healthy way that makes sense, that fits their life, that makes them feel valued and shows them that they do need to be responsible, but also points out, hey, you're good at this, you're good at that. This is a real talent of yours. You know, I've been watching the way you go about it, and you're uniquely good at this. Like, I think another thing that's missing in this picture is pumping young men up and saying to that, unconfident 14-year-old boy who hasn't grown into his man body yet, and his voice hasn't properly broken, and he doesn't look like the man that he wants to look like, saying to that kid, hey man, you're actually really good at this and this, and I really like the way that you speak to other people, or I really like these other parts of your personality. That's great. And actually geeing young boys up about those things and saying, work on that, be more like that. Like, that's really valuable and worthwhile. Then you're going to have young guys go, oh, actually, I'm doing all right, and these are the things I'm good at, and these are the things I could improve, and people actually give a shit about that. And then I think that's the antidote to hate and anger and that just deafening insecurity of, oh, well, I'm a loser. I don't fit into that stereotype box of, you know, the 6-foot jack dude who's got the Bugatti and all the chicks, because of course I don't, because I'm a 14-year-old boy. And
Exactly.
the internet's telling me that I have to be either that archetype, or I'm a loser and I'm a brokey, I'm nothing. And so you're shooting for something that is, one, if you got there, you'd realize how hollow and empty it is, and it wouldn't make you happy anyway. And two, it's impossible to be that, or you're a loser. And that makes me angry. That makes me want to numb myself out. That makes me apathetic. That makes me want to lean into those vices that you mentioned. And so it seems like, yes, rites of initiation. And as part of that, saying, empowering young men and saying, like, you're great in these ways and you can be better and you should be better, because if you want to feel not apathetic and you want to feel part of something, then you need to serve and find the beauty and the strength in that.
I got boys saying to me, but I keep seeing all this content everywhere. It discourages them. And a big conversation I have every day with lads is, why are there people, not your mates, who maybe want you to be insecure by, dunking on you, throwing you under the bus, but like, why would these voices online want you to feel insecure, anxious, not big enough, musty enough, which you spoke so well to, Cal? What's in it for them? And of course, they can profit off it. And I tell them, you should be deeply suspicious of people who are telling you that you are a problem, have a problem, that you're not enough, you're insufficient, and then conveniently they have a solution to all of that they're going to sell you, if you trust them. And it's kind of like a toxic relationship. And if someone isolates you from your friends, your family, says that you're nothing without them, that I'm the only person that gets you, can love you and support you, like it's a dangerous recipe. And I think so many of the bad voices, because back to the concern that we have for boys is, I think it gets, because it's like, I refuse to name names, but we start talking about the names of these particular influencers, and I'm kind of like, no, they're just like a symptom and capitalizing on some things that are not going well because of some harmful ideas that boys have inherited about themselves as men, about women, about how they should act. And these guys are just filling the void. Like, they're preying on their insecurities. And I say to boys, like, I want you to be aware of that dynamic in yourself. And I say, like, I'm guilty of that myself. Like, I have had to realize that how easily you are to manipulate, to have people like play you, to, just fool you, because when you're insecure, seeking validation, like it's a real vulnerable space to be in. And I think that's something that, we have to actually tangibly help boys through that. You can't just say to someone, just be less insecure, or have more self-respect. It's like, well, no, you got to go and do things that you respect in yourself so that you develop more self-respect. It doesn't just like grow out of the, ether in the morning and fall down upon you. And so I think, what you touched on is just so important to help boys be grounded. Because I think if we don't, then these other voices, these other people who aren't actually in relationship with them, who aren't there when things hit the fan and aren't there to pick up the pieces, are taking too much space in that, like voices that aren't actually their family, their friends, their mates at school who actually care for them, even their teachers, their coaches, like whoever. We've given too much sway to people who aren't actually there for the day-to-day, the mundane of actually being in boys' lives, supporting them, encouraging them, but they have filled the gap. And I get it. It's tough. We're all time poor, but we definitely need like adult males to be more engaged with young men in whatever sphere of influence that looks like, to do exactly what you just said. Notice them and encourage them, and where necessary, give them those appropriate challenges that, like, you have more, you can show up. Like, I spell it out for some, but I'm glad I don't have to as much these days. Like, the work I do is because I hold men and boys in such high regard. It's why I have such high standards, and why I can be quite impatient as a facilitator, because I'm like, boys, I know how much good and gold you've got to offer. Like, let's step up. Let's show up for ourselves and for others. I refuse to treat you guys as if you don't have the same moral, intellectual, emotional capacity, relational care to show up for yourselves, because I know you do. I know you do. So let's just move through this peer pressure. Let's feel the discomfort and grow together through it, because I hold you in such high regard. And I think, I don't know if we do that enough or use that language enough in this space. And I'm not saying I'm the only one or like I've got it all worked out, but as I've evolved how I talk to boys over the last, 5 or 6 years, they really, really have to know that we're for them. There's things that I think don't serve them. There's things in subcultures of boyhood that I'm like, I don't know if that's good. I think that's a bit trash. I think that could end up, backfiring. But fundamentally, they have to know, like, the reason we're here investing time and energy into this is because we give a rip about you and we want to see you thrive.
Yeah, that's great. I'll come back to that. I just want to talk about the symptom thing that you mentioned there, because that's absolutely an argument that I make as well, which is that there's culturally and from the media so much focus on the symptoms, which are whoever the scapegoat is. And I agree with not needing to mention people's names because I'm sick of tired of it. So you must be beyond sick of tired of it, right? But there's so
Yeah,
much obsession with this character or that character. And it sort of suggests if only we could cut the head off that snake, or if we got rid of them, then the problem wouldn't be there. And it's fundamentally missing the
that's
point
right.
that, as you said, it's a symptom. And if you get rid of one, another one's going to pop up in its place because there's a market there. And the real question is, why is there a market there? And what can we do about that market? And there's a much deeper part of the iceberg underneath all of this, and just pointing at one person or another and saying that's the bad guy, as Scarface said, is
Mhm.
lazy. It's lazy. It's easy to point out how dark and evil someone is. And sure, it's not like, I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but the
Sure.
notion that, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just because of this bad guy that we have this enormous global issue is just short-sighted. I like that you said that, and I hope obviously you'd be sharing that with young men around Australia as well, because I think that's an important way of looking at it. It's like, yeah, cool, we can look at it on a surface level, but that's never going to change anything, and that's way too easy. We got to look at the bottom of the iceberg.
I don't think it takes much nous insight to go, okay, there are some things that aren't as they could be, as they ought to be, as we'd like them to be. The bigger question is like, why is that? And what are we actually doing to actually create better pathways for boys to challenge the stuff that does not serve them, does not serve women and girls, their relationships? That's actually the harder task. And I'm certainly not suggesting that, as I say to boys, just because I'm the bloke holding the mic for the moment doesn't mean I've got all the answers. I'm here asking some questions about what do we actually need so that you can have a healthy identity. And a big thing, Cal, that I'm continuously thinking about is like, how do we help all of us as we started this conversation, right? Dealing with rejection, dealing with failure, dealing with disappointment, because that's actually what we need. Because I'm, not that interested in how much a guy can bench press if he doesn't know how to be a safe confidant for his mate, if women get the ick around him, if he doesn't know how to deal with maybe, job loss or bouncing back from disappointment, or he didn't execute something as well personally or professionally as he'd like. How does he bounce back from that? Because that's the conversation I have a lot with boys. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this because it comes up in the realm of toughness. Because we talk about, what traits should we have, shouldn't we have? And, toughness comes up a lot because boys feel the pressure to be tough. And I want to be very clear on a couple of fronts with them. I say to the boys, I'm not here to get you to be more emotional. I'm here to help us all become more emotionally intelligent, to be more aware and in tune with what's going on in here, as well as what's going on for other people around us, which is attunement, empathy, care, whatever you want to call it, compassion. That is a skill that you actually need. And in that, we then talk about, but sir, shouldn't you be tough? And I say, absolutely. But can you guys define toughness? And what I find so tragic, Cal, is when I ask young boys to define toughness, what they describe is petty, criminal, calloused, cruel behavior. Whereas when I think of toughness, and I'd love listeners to contribute to this, like I want to hear your thoughts, like what do you envisage? I think about people who don't compromise their convictions, their principles in the face of huge hardship, in the face of betrayal, trauma, rejection, pain, grief, loss. They bounce back. Maybe not that day, after they bury their dad, their mum, but they bounce back. They don't hurt themselves, hurt others, self-destruct as they're dealing with life. They don't bury it because that'll come up later, but they bounce back from it all. And I think for me, that's something that I just feel like we really need to not just articulate better for young men, but actually embody it. That you can feel sad, you can feel disappointed. Like recently, I had to keep presenting. I just lost my beloved nonna. We were very close, and I was grieving. And I don't think I'm some hero because oh my gosh, I then had to go to work the next day. But it's like that's what you do, and I could hold grief and sadness intention with like, I'm here to show up for these boys, be hopeful, encourage them, champion them, want good for them. That was a very small pocket of that for me. Other people, they have to endure huge hardship and toughness. And I think if they don't lose their decency, their character, their principles, I think that is what we need to praise more, notice more, have a value system around, because I think that's when we see all these counterfeits. It's like, well, I don't know how to do that level of toughness, standing up for what's right in a pinch. So I'm just going to default to banter and throwing mates under the bus and doing stupid things and pretending to act tough.
Settling for pseudo toughness because you don't know what real toughness is. And the irony, I think, is that real strength and the definition of toughness that we should be aspiring to actually exists exactly where those teenage boys would think the opposite exists, exactly where those teenage boys would say that sensitivity or that femininity, like you talked about, empathy, that's actually where toughness, real toughness exists, surprisingly. And I think people often work this out as they get older. And I would say from speaking to hundreds of men about their lives and the pain that they've been through, if you were to ask me what's the toughest thing that someone can do, I would say to be able to properly process and express emotional pain. That would be surprising to hear for a lot of people, particularly very young people, because that doesn't sound tough at all, right? But I think that because I've spoken to so many tough guys, and been around tough guys and thought I was a tough guy at certain times, hilariously. And the hardest thing for men to do is to accept and sit with and process the pain that they're in without reaching for some sort of other distraction or excuse or whatever it is, and really face
Pleasure or
it and go through
dissociation.
it, and then be able to own it and share it. That is tough to me. And when men arrive at that point, they're changed in, I think, the way they always wanted.
And I think life will continue to invite us to confront our pains and our insecurities and to do it well. Because, yeah, I don't know how you could conceive that it's tough to deal with pain, whether you think it's massive, a little, proportionate to the others or the bloke next to you, whatever, it's your pain. But I don't know if it's tough to then self-destruct or hurt others because you're experiencing pain. Right. And that's why, that's one path that men go down. The other is obviously pursuing pleasure, escaping through pleasure, or disassociation, which is like, I'm going to distract myself with whatever I can in front of me, whether it's gaming, gambling, all sorts of things to escape what is.
That's how you know it requires true courage, because look at the lengths we'll go to escape it. And you got
100%.
men who would rather run into gunfire than talk about how they're feeling. So it has to be toughness because it's the hardest thing for us to do. It can't be weakness.
That's what I'm trying to champion for boys. And I think people who can mishear this or say, oh, that's so fluffy. I'm not saying people need to open up and be emotional and share that with every single person that passes them. I'm just like, man, I just hope you've got at least one mate, one other human in your life that you can be open and honest with, or, and if you need to go and actually get some support, please do so. I have, and so many others have. I just think to myself, this is actually what we need for our well-being. And I think to myself about this, I have so many young men who come up to me after my sessions. They wait for most of the crowd to have gone, or they DM me or send me an email afterwards, and they're just in pain. And whether you think it's small, big, proportion, whatever, it's their pain. And what's so heartbreaking for me, Cal, is they just feel like they can't even talk to their mate. So they come up to me, who was a stranger 90 minutes ago before I started yapping, and they share. and they open up and they tell me so much. And I always feel so heartbroken when I find out that they're just actually worried that if they're open and honest with their mates, that their mates are going to throw them over under the bus. That they'll make a joke out of it, use this against them. And I think to myself, gosh, I wonder how much men's mental health would actually change overnight if everyone just had a mate or a couple of mates that actually had their back, that they could be fully human around and not have to perform to this stereotype, not trying to perform to this, hierarchy, trying to, tear down another person. Cause I think to myself, that's hell in your head being like, hey, these two guys that I call mates, I don't even know if I can fully trust them.
The irony that they all feel like that. And the ones who actually would tear someone down are the ones in the most trouble themselves.
No doubt. And we know that from
the
research.
They do it. They tear their mate down or the kid next to them down because they're so afraid. They're the most afraid of their own feelings, right? And that's their idea of toughness that they offer to you when you ask them. That all that surface level bravado bullshit is just that cover that they see that they can throw on. And, if I can put someone else down or if I can mistreat a woman, someone weaker than me, it'll take the attention off me or it'll create the illusion of, I'm the tough, cool guy. And then as you grow up, hopefully you realize like someone who mistreats women or always is out of control or has to challenge other people to fight them or talks constantly about how much money they make, how much stuff they have, is actually piss weak just about 100% of the time.
There is a fragility there.
And they deserve our compassion. And that's actually the antidote, which you know. So how do we do that?
Absolutely.
And you're out there actively doing that, trying to heal that emotional pain, trying to get people to be able to process that pain and understand that it makes them strong and not weak. How do we do that? How are you out there doing that in a way that's not the typical young boys are a loaded gun, they're all dangerous, we need to speak to them as if they're the problem before they've even done anything wrong, and then they switch off and they don't want to talk, right? So how are you out there approaching this?
They have to know that we're for them. They have to know that we're there to listen and empathize and understand that we're not there to cancel them, that we're there to lean in believing we're going to see them at their best. And we have to bring and put skin in the game. You can't just expect others to like lean in more, be more courageous, share more authentically, like if we're not prepared to go there. And I would just say that that's been a big part for me is, and maybe we should revisit this on another chat, is like, I don't do this work. Yes, I've read a lot of books and a lot of reports, but a lot of this is birthed out of my own pain and having to sit with it and having people love and sit with me in my own pain and grief. So that's actually what I anchor this work around, not because I've read, some books about this, but because I have sat and continue to sit with my own pain, as well as all the other wonderful emotional and human experiences that I've had and try to be comfortable with all of that and then offer that to others to make them feel less alone. So that's a part of it. I would love to pick up this conversation again with you. Thank you so much for this privilege to speak with you.
You're a weapon, Daniel. Thank you.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Youngblood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Youngblood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video and they're all up on our Youngblood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.